There was a young woman, and she was thinking about getting married, and the man that she was dating was, for lack of a better word, just a jerk. He had cheated on her. He had no aspirations. Any objective person could see that the guy that she had fallen for was not suitable marriage material. And yet still she persisted, and she said, I know I can't trust him, and I know that he doesn't treat me very well sometimes, and I know he's not going anywhere, but I think he may be the one. Our culture has embraced a rather absurd notion that there's just one person who can, in the words that were immortalized by Tom Cruise in Jerry Maguire, complete us. This is a disastrous mindset with which to approach a lifelong marital decision. The notion of a soulmate is actually a very ancient notion. Well over 2,000 years ago, the Greek philosopher Plato, he surmised that a perfect human being was tragically split in two, and it resulted in a race of creatures that were sentenced to spend the rest of their lives searching for that missing other who can complete them. And despite such bizarre philosophical musing, the notion of a soulmate has deeply rooted itself in our culture. It inspires countless movies and novels and songs. One Rutgers University study found that 94% of people in their 20s say the first requirement in a spouse is someone who qualifies as a soulmate. Just as surprising as 87% think that they'll actually find that person when they are ready. A culture, it's interesting, that's suspicious of God has brazenly embraced some sort of forceful and intelligent destiny that brings two lovelorn souls together. The real danger in this line of thinking is that many people mistake a storm of emotion as the identifying mark of their soulmate. And I mean, how else can you identify, destiny other than feelings, how you feel, your emotions? And such individuals marry on an infatuation binge without seriously considering character, compatibility, life goals, family desires, spiritual health, and other important concerns. And then when the music fades and the relationship requires work, one or both partners suddenly discover that they were mistaken. This person must not be their soulmate after all because they're having a hard time. If they weren't having such a hard time, it would be their soulmate, but the fact that they're having to work at their marriage and go through things means that I must have married the wrong person, so they panic, and their soulmate must actually still be out there. And such people can't get to the divorce court fast enough because someone might steal their true soulmate, meant only for them. Listen, when we get married for trivial reasons, we're going to seek divorce for trivial reasons. So today, I want to think with you about a different type of soulmate that we need to be seeking. It isn't a soulmate in Plato's fatalistic sense of the word. I want you to think about finding someone who is a soulmate, S-O-L-E. That is someone who is going to walk together with God with you. Amos chapter 3 and verse 3 says, "Can two walk together except they be agreed?" We need to be in agreement with God so that we can be in agreement with one another. That's the type of soulmate we need to be considering. So I want to suggest three principles that both the unmarried need to seek if they plan to get married, and that the married need to prioritize if they want to turn their marriage into the type of marriage that pleases God. And so consider these three principles with me, and we're going to end with a flurry of questions. Especially, I think these questions might be helpful to people who are considering marriage or will be considering marriage at some point in the future. First of all, I want you to think about spiritual soulmates, those who are trying to walk together with God. One of the things that they recognize is they recognize the importance of the godly counsel of experience over their emotions. The world's going to tell you when it comes to marriage, a lot of people are going to tell you, and songs are going to tell you, Hollywood's going to tell you, well, just listen to your heart and just do what feels right. That's bad advice. Our Disney and Hollywood-driven culture pushes an emotion-based agenda when it comes to relationships that is based far more on our fickle feelings than it is on faith and on the experience of the faithful. When it comes to who we're going to marry, it really isn't all just up to us if we are Christians. We want to listen, first of all, to God's counsel. And so you should be seeking God's counsel in who it is that you would choose to marry above all. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. It's not about your emotions and what you think and how you feel. No, trust in the Lord in all your ways. That includes your marriage, who you're going to have relationships with. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths. Matthew 6:33, seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness. So in our choices, we need to be seeking God's counsel, God's kingdom. But let me mention to you, second of all, part of that counsel that we need to be hearing, the counsel of experience, is the counsel of faithful Christians. Proverbs chapter 11 and verse 14 says, where there is no counsel, the people fall. I think we could insert there, marriages fall where there is no counsel. But in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. Can I suggest to you that one of those counselors that you might consider here as we think about the church would be your elders? In Titus chapter 1, verses 5 and 6, notice the qualifications of elders in verses 5 and 6. It says, Paul writes to Titus, he tells Titus, I left you in Crete that you should set in order the things that are lacking and appoint elders in every city. And then he tells Titus, the evangelist, here's who you should be looking for to appoint. A man should be blameless, verse 6 says, the husband of one wife. Look for somebody who's married, who's still married. The husband of one wife, and someone who has faithful children. Other versions, I think, more rightly actually translate that, believing children, not accused of dissipation or insubordination. The man is blameless, the husband of one wife. So what do we want from an elder? One of the first things, it's written to Titus, we want someone who understands marriage, and we want someone who understands what it is to raise children, to parent children. Those two things were important. Now, those two things are important because one of the things that those elders are doing is they're instructing other people. If you look at Titus chapter 1, they're trying to change the minds of people who are thinking wrong. But if you look at Titus chapter 2, you'll also find it's not just elders, it's older men who are supposed to be involved in teaching younger men. And it's older women who are supposed to be involved in teaching younger women. So I would ask you, before you get married, have you ever considered just saying to Dennis or Vernon, what do you think about our relationship? Maybe even talk about some of the problems and the pitfalls and the struggles that you're facing. What do you think about some of those things? And honestly seek their counsel and their advice. That's one of the reasons that they're appointed elders, because they've been there and they understand marriage and they've had a marriage for several years and they've raised children. Listen to their counsel and listen to their advice. That's why they're here. Not only that, but look for other people who have been through marriage. Look for the older men and older women in the congregation who have successfully, journeyed on the waters of marriage and parenting, and seek their advice. Your elders wouldn't be elders if they'd not been successful in their marriages and as parents. So seek out their counsel. Seek out their judgment. Now, here's somebody else that you might want to consider, especially if you have godly parents. If you don't have godly parents, God-fearing parents, parents that think marriage needs to be based upon biblical principles, then I'm not sure if their advice is always worth hearing. But if you have godly parents who base their lives upon Scripture, then you might also want to consider seeking their counsel. Listen to godly parents. Ephesians 6 says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. They're supposed to be instructing you in the Lord. And you might every once in a while seek their counsel. I can tell you that there were people that I had dated before I got married that I may have acted like I wasn't listening to my parents, but there were times what they said really stuck in the back of my mind, and they knew the person that I was perhaps dating wasn't maybe the right person for me, and certainly wasn't going to be someone that spiritually strengthened me. And that advice and that counsel stuck in the back of my mind. There's times that I broke up with people because I had that guilt trip from mom and dad in the back of my head. You need that guilt trip every once in a while. You need to listen to their counsel. They can give you some good advice. Sometimes they've made their mistakes too. And they don't want you to make the same mistakes that they've made. And so you need to listen to them. In Judges 14, you read about Samson. And Samson sees this Philistine woman that he wants to marry. And one of the questions that Samson's parents ask him, who are godly-minded, God-fearing people, is they just say, isn't there someone from among the Israelites whom you could consider for marriage? Why would you choose to marry yourself and join yourself to someone who holds a differing philosophy about God and the things of God? And they give him good counsel, but he ignores their counsel, and he just says basically, well, she pleases me well. I think she looks good. We might have just insert in there, I feel like she's my soulmate, and he gets married. It doesn't work out. He doesn't listen to mom and dad. That scripture is there for a reason, because it's trying to counsel us that, hey, maybe you should consider the godly wisdom of your parents in who you decide to marry at some point. But sometimes we ignore our parents. We ignore the elders. We ignore the sermons that we've heard on this subject and the teachings that we've heard. And because we've had this emotional experience, we enter into it anyway. And then we regret it. Well, a second thing that spiritual soulmates will recognize is they will recognize the imperative over the impulsive nature of commitment. The soulmate philosophy, this idea that I feel like this is the right person, that leads men to marry men. That leads women to unite with women. The soulmate philosophy leads some to divorce because they get tired of their marriage and they think that they found someone who's more fun and makes them happier and pleases their feelings. The soulmate philosophy then causes people to violate the scriptural teaching on marriage because they're trying to pursue that person, no matter who that is, who completes us. And one of the things we need to understand about marriage is that marriage has limitations. God has set those limitations in Matthew chapter 19. In verses 4 through 9, Jesus says, have you not read, he gets asked a question about divorce, have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female? He goes back to the beginning, he says, this is how God created people. And then he says, this is why God has ordained marriage in the way that he has. He says, for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife. That specifies who you can marry. Not just anyone that you enjoy being with, whether it be a man or a woman or whatever it is. No, marriage is limited in this text. It is imperative that it be between a man and a woman. And it's emphasized that this marriage is for life. Not just until the experiential feelings die down, not just until you get tired of one another, but marriage is for life. So then they are no longer two, but one flesh. What God has joined together, let not man separate. God's very specific about that. So there's limitations, there are boundaries to marriage. Then they ask about divorce. And verse 8, Jesus says this, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, permitted you to divorce your wives. From the beginning it was not so. I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another, commits adultery. Now there's another limitation. You can't marry someone who has been put away because they've been adulterers. You can't marry someone that's been put away, period. If you remarry someone who has been put away, you commit adultery with that person. Even if you enjoy that person's fun, you feel like that's the one, God has limited who you can marry in this passage. And if they've already been married and they've been put away, he says, you're not supposed to marry them. Whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery. So marriage is limited. It's limited to a man and a woman. It's limited to one lifetime. It is limited to the never married or those who are scripturally divorce. So this is an imperative. It's an imperative that we need to understand. Well, there's a third principle that I think soulmates, S-O-L-E, need to recognize, and that is they need to recognize the priority of internals over externals. The worldly view of dating seeks a person sometimes for inferior reasons. We look for physical beauty. They have the right look. I think we look good on an Instagram selfie together, right? I think we'd be a good match when we take our Be Real pictures together. We think that's shallow thinking. They look good. Sometimes we marry somebody for material wealth, and sometimes when you get a little older especially, none of you maybe looks as good as you used to, then it's about the money, right? Maybe it's the intellectual pedigree. We like the fact that this person is well known and they're very smart. They challenge us mentally. All these are a nice bonus to the package, but the scriptures advise us to be careful not to make decisions based on these attributes. Are you choosing a mate because she looks good or because she is good? What kind of wife should we seek? Now, let me give you an idea. One of the things we learn from Proverbs chapter 31, and I would remind you that this, if you look at verse 1 of Proverbs 31, is the advice that the mother of King Lemuel was giving to her son. And the mother says, who can find a virtuous wife? That's what you need to be looking for, virtue. You're not looking at externals then. We're looking at the internal qualities of virtue, for her worth is far above rubies. Proverbs 11:22, it talks about as a jewel of gold in a pig's snout, so is a lovely woman who lacks discretion. You have a beautiful woman, but she doesn't have character. It's like giving a pig a gold ring in their nose. Why would you do that? And in Proverbs chapter 31 and verse 30, at the end of Proverbs, it says, charm is deceitful. The fact that she's very charming and she says flirtatious things, that she makes you feel good, and she flatters you. Charm is deceitful, but in beauty is passing. The fact that she looks beautiful at some point in time, father time, starts to impact all of us. And physical beauty only lasts as long as father time is merciful to us. And so he says the focus should be a woman who fears the Lord. That's internal, not external. So a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. The emphasis then needs to be on the heart. There are some men, you'd be better off marrying a person who looks like they've been run over by a Mack truck, but they're thoughtful and they're gentle and they're godly, than to marry someone who is beautiful and hot, but they engage in verbal and physical brutality. They have no respect for God. They have no respect for your feelings. You're focused on externals. You should be focused on internals. Even the most adorable person will eventually lose the luster of youth. But the hidden man of the heart, and what Larry read to us early from 1 Peter chapter 3, that is the incorruptible beauty of a meek and a quiet spirit. That is in the sight of God of great price, and it should be in the sight of us of great price too. So let's not get all excited when we have lots of fun. We think our partner's cute, hot, or the guy's funny, and let's forget about the fact these qualities can fade. And that's true of men as well as women. True of men as well as women. Women want financial security sometimes. And they get excited when they find a man who seems to have some gold in his pockets. I would suggest to you that you be more focused on a man who lives out the golden rule than a man who has gold. There are a lot of guys with money who have no idea how to treat a wife. And there are many a woman who are living in a big house on a big plot of land who end up being lonely and miserable and spiritually stagnant. One of the saddest shows, I think, is Desperate Housewives. But is it not true? It is all these women living in these really fancy houses, and they got nothing better to do because they're lonely but talk about other people, lust after the pool boy, go out and try to fulfill their emptiness with shopping and money and more things. They're lonely. Why? Because they're not being treated right. Their relationships aren't right with their spouse, first of all, and because of that, their relationships in so many other ways are destroyed. So, if we've sought out godly, spiritual counsel, and we've considered whether we're ready to make a lifelong commitment, and we're not acting on impulse, and we've truly examined whether or not we're prioritizing internal beauty over external beauty, then I'd say it's time for us to ask a few questions that are based on these three principles of soulmates that we've set forth. So before you yourself get married, I want to encourage you to ask these questions about yourself and about the one that you're considering marrying. And if any of these questions give you pause or convict your conscience or bother you, then these are either red flags or they are areas where your relationship either needs to be canceled or needs to be confronted before you further it. Number one, simple. Is this person a believer in God or believer in Jesus Christ? Psalm 14 says, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. Do you really want to marry someone that the Bible, God, calls a fool? 2 Corinthians chapter 6. I don't know how you cannot apply this to marriage, but some people try to act like it's not talking about marriage. But I don't see how you avoid it. 2 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 14 says, do not be unequally yoked together with unbelievers. Don't do it. That includes your marriage. What fellowship has righteousness with lawlessness? Here, you're trying to live a righteous life, but they don't care about the righteousness of God? Why would you want to engage in that? What communion has light with darkness? What accord has Christ with Belial? What part has a believer with an unbeliever? What agreement has the temple of God with idols? You are the temple of the living God. As God has said, I will dwell in them. I will walk among them. I will be their God. They should be my people. Therefore, come out from among them and be separate, says the Lord. Don't touch what is unclean, and I will receive you. So is this person a believer in God and a believer in Jesus Christ? And I don't just mean, do they mentally believe? Are they living it? Are they seeking to live out that relationship with God and with Jesus Christ? Question number 2. Is this a person that my godly parents, my God-fearing elders, my spiritually minded counselors, I'm not talking about just any counselor, I'm talking about your spiritually minded counselors, your elders, your spiritual mentors in the church, your parents. Is this someone that they would recommend, that they would approve for me? Ask that question. And if somebody's telling you, I see red flags here. I see some warning signs. I'm concerned about this decision. Take some time to think about it and be honest as to whether or not that's good, constructive criticism you're hearing. And maybe they're seeing some blind spots that you don't see. But is this someone they would recommend? The mother of King Lemuel, Proverbs 31 and verse 1, was giving her son good advice on who to look for with the virtuous wife. We'd read that whole chapter as well if we had time, but we're not going to read it. But go home and read it. That's good advice there. Number 3, is this a person who shows an absolute commitment to the lifelong nature of marriage and is unquestionably prepared to make this vow? Marriage is for life. One man, one woman for life. If they're saying things about their friends like, oh, my friend, she got divorced, but, she just wasn't in love anymore. I'm so glad that she's in love now. This person doesn't respect lifelong marriage. You can tell it by the comments. And when they get tired of you and fall in love with somebody else, they're going to treat you just the way that their friend is. My dad tells a story about he was doing a wedding for a girl from the church who was married, someone who was an unbeliever, and the guy was up there during the rehearsal saying, we don't want some of these traditional things, this till death do you part, that's old school, cut that out. And he just said, then find someone else to do the wedding. Because if the vows aren't going to be about you being a leader and she submitting to you and this being for life, then I'm not doing it. And I think he looked over at the girl at that point and said, and if he has a problem with lifelong marriage, I don't know, you got a few hours to reconsider. I think that was a pretty awkward wedding that weekend. from his stories. But that's true. That's true. And somebody needs to say that if you're seeing those warning signs. Are you committed to lifelong marriage? Number 5. We're on 4. Is this a person who understands what Jesus taught about the limitations of marriage? About the limitations of marriage. That it's one man, one woman, one lifetime. There's only one divorce exception, and that is sexual immorality. Number 5 now. Does this person have a good reputation since becoming a Christian from all who know them? Proverbs 31 and verse 10. Who can find a virtuous wife? She has a good reputation. I think of Ruth. Ruth is described in the Old Testament as a virtuous woman. And because she's a virtuous woman, her mother-in-law was encouraging her to seek out Boaz, and Boaz was interested in marrying her because he could tell she was a good, virtuous woman. She had a good reputation. She was caring for her mother-in-law. If you ever watch the words of Ruth, she was polite and respectful in how she talked to everyone. She was very discreet in how she handled herself around the working men. She listened to counsel from her mother-in-law and from Boaz. There's so many good things about her when you read through the book of Ruth. She had a good reputation. But if you've got somebody and their own family doesn't like them, you've got somebody and they quit job after job after job and everybody they work with can't stand them. You got somebody that just has a bad reputation at school or out in the community. They got a rap sheet, a mile long. You should think twice about whether or not you're going to do that. You shouldn't do that. Do they have a good reputation? Number 6. Would I still want to be with this person if they lost all their money? Job's wife. They lose all their money. He loses his health. They lose their kids. And basically she just is like, I'm done with this. Let's just curse God and die. Would you still want to be with that person if they lost all their money? Would you want to be with that person if they lost their property? Sometimes people have ulterior motives on why they want to get married too. Would you want to be with that person if they lost their health? Would you still be committed to them if they went through cancer, chemo, stroke, couldn't walk anymore? Are you still going to be committed through sickness and in health, for better or for worse, till death do you part? Would you still be committed if they lost those things? At some point, as we age, we will lose some of those things. 1 Peter 3 says we shouldn't be looking for the external things. We should be looking for the internal qualities. Number 7, if you're a woman, is this a man who accepts and embraces his God-given role as a spiritual leader? Is he ready to be a spiritual leader? I'm not talking about just bringing money to the home. I'm talking about leading the home in a spiritual way. Does he embrace his role as a provider? I have met multiple women who they are working the job, they are doing all the work, they're bringing the income home because husband is sitting around playing video games all day long. Do not marry somebody who doesn't work, who's able to work. You need to be marrying somebody who's a spiritual leader and a provider for his home. That's the role of a man in a home. And who is protecting the home. If they're hurting you, they're obviously not protecting their home. They lay a finger on you. Do not get married to that person. Their job is to protect you and to protect your children and be a protector of the home. You see that red flag, one instance of it, do not do it. Their job is to be a spiritual leader, provider, and protector. So are they willing to work? Do they have a good work ethic? Do they show signs of being abusive rather than protective? If they do, don't do that. Number 8, men, is this a woman who accepts and embraces her God-given role in managing the home, raising a family, and lifting up her husband? That is the role that God assigns to the woman. Those are things that have to be worked out in the relationship, but is this something that she embraces. Proverbs 31, you see a woman who cares for her children. She makes sure that they have food. She makes sure that they're properly clothed. She's also working outside the home. She cares about the poor. That's the type of person you want to look for, somebody who is seeking out those types of things. Number 9, and this is our longest one. Is this a person who is pursuing growth in all the areas that Peter encourages in 2 Peter chapter 1? I want you to turn to this scripture with me. 2 Peter chapter 1 and verse 5. 2 Peter chapter 1 and verse 5. I'm not asking, when I ask this question, I'm not asking if they're sinless. You aren't going to marry a sinless person. Nobody's sinless. If you think you're sinless, then, well, you're self-righteous then. Nobody in here is sinless. And so I'm not asking you to hold their past against them. Sometimes people have sinned in their past and they've done things that they regret, and then they've come to the Lord and they've come to Jesus Christ and they've turned. But if God doesn't hold our past against us, we shouldn't hold our past against other people. But what I'm asking is, from the time they become a Christian or have committed themselves to Jesus Christ, do you see growth? Now, how do you know if you see growth in a person? One of the things you do is you look at the earmarks of 2 Peter chapter 1, verses 5 through 8, and you consider some things here. It says, for this reason we should give all diligence, and we should add to our faith virtue. What is virtue? We're going to think about that. Add to your virtue knowledge. Add to your knowledge self-control. Add to your self-control perseverance or patience. Add to that godliness. Then add to your godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness love. I'm not asking if they're sinless. I'm not asking you to hold their past against them, but I am asking, first of all, if in their relationship with Christ, do they long for virtue or for moral excellence? Let me give you some ways you know they haven't. If they are asking you to lie about a situation, if they ask you to lie about somewhere you've been, if they ask you to lie about something you've done, if they've asked you to lie about something they've said, then they are not morally excellent. That needs to be confronted. If they've tried to touch you sexually and inappropriately, then they are not morally excellent. That needs to be confronted. If their language is sinful and crude, they are not morally excellent, and that needs to be confronted. Are they trying to grow in those ways? And if you confront them and if you rebuke them, how do they respond to that? I'm asking if in their relationship to Christ, secondly, do they long to grow in their knowledge? That's the second area of growth. I'm not saying they've got to be professors of theology or experts in apocalyptic literature. I'm just simply asking if does the Bible and what it says matter to them, and do they want to know what it says? Do they want to know God's will? Do they want to know God's character? Do they want to know God's correction? Do they want to know God's instruction for their lives? Do they long for that, and do they receive that in a positive manner? Are they willing to grow in their knowledge? I'm asking, thirdly, if in their relationship with Christ, are they trying to grow in their self-control? How do they handle their anger? Do they indulge in drugs and alcohol that weaken their self-control? Do they try to put themselves in situations with you where they can easily give in to their sensual passions and desires for you? That's not somebody who's seeking self-control. That's somebody who's seeking to be out of control with you. Are they deep into credit card debt and financial problems because they don't have financial self-control? Is she a shopaholic? Is he wasteful? Are they willing to spend less on themselves so they can give to the Lord in their, or are they selfish financially? Do they show self-control in areas of their life? I'm asking if in their relationship with Christ, are they people of perseverance? Don't marry a quitter. Don't marry somebody who gives up, breaks down, quits at the first sign of trouble. Don't marry somebody who's always quitting their job, quitting on their friends, quitting on people every time they go through a tough time. They're going to quit on you too. Do they endure through the trials of family and the pitfalls of friendships and the challenges of culture with a constancy? Most importantly, are they willing to stay committed to Christ and the church, even in tough moments? Look for someone who wants to grow in their patience and endurance and persevere through the tough times. You're going to need that because you're going to have tough times. Storms are going to hit the house, And the people who are built on that rock are the ones who are going to make it through the storms, not the people who have built on a sand foundation. In their relationship to Christ, are they people of godliness? And by godliness, what I mean is, do they care about what God thinks about their life? Do they care what God thinks about how they talk? Do they care what God thinks about how they worship? Do they care what God thinks about how they behave? Do they care what God thinks about how they dress? Do they care what God thinks about where they work, how they live, how they treat people? In your conversations, are they willing to talk about God, the Bible, the church, or is this a topic that you've constantly got to ignore with them? If you're only limited in your dates and your time with them to conversations about the temporary things of life, well, we talk about work, we talk about weather, we talk about sports, we like to talk about food, but you can't talk about spiritual things, then don't do it. These aren't people pursuing godliness. These aren't people interested in godliness. Are they willing to talk about spiritual things and the things that really matter in this life? Or do you just talk about trivial stuff all the time? Watch TikToks and memes together. Something more to your life than that you agree on what kind of cheeseburger to eat at the restaurant. In their relationship to Christ, are they people of brotherly kindness? Some people are jerks. Don't marry them. Some people don't know how to treat people. They gossip, they complain, they backbite, they're backstabbers. Even some religious people. Is this a person who is kind to people, even people who have hurt their feelings? Done them wrong, exercise poor judgment? Are they willing to love their enemies? Or are they fault finders and nitpickers and talebearers? People of brotherly kindness, they have a warmth, a compassion, a loveliness about them. They're careful in what they say with people and without people there. And here's the thing, if they're talking about everybody else behind their back, then even in your marriage, your spouse, when you tick them off, they'll be talking about you behind your back too. And that doesn't usually go well in a marriage. Are they careful in what they say about you and everybody else and how they say it? Do they want to make peace or do they want to make trouble? Do they want to bless and value or do they want to curse and demean others? Do they treat you with courtesy? How do they treat their family? How does he treat his mom? How do they treat their parents? How do they treat their siblings? And then finally, I'm asking, as you look at these words of growth, are they people of love? Love is seen in its sacrifice. John 15:13, we know that Christ loved us. Why? Because he gave himself for us. Loves us, and we see it in his sacrifice. So is the person that you're with willing to sacrifice for the Lord to serve him? Are they willing to sacrifice their time, their money, their strength for their brethren who need them? Is he willing to sacrifice for you? Does he show up without his wallet every time you go out? Forgot my wallet again. I guess you'll have to pay. Don't marry cheapskate either. Do you see a love in them that is reflective of Jesus Christ and his people, and that will positively impact you and your children and all others your family will influence in the years to come? I would just say, look for love. Now, here's what I mean by love. Not the soulmate, serendipity type of love that Hollywood talks about. Type of love that Paul talks about. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. 1 Corinthians 13 and verse 4. What is love? Love suffers long. When things are tough, they suffer through it. Love is kind. Are they kind? Love doesn't envy. Are they jealous of other people? I had a girl one time, she was dating another guy, and they walked in our house, and they weren't even married yet. They were thinking about getting engaged. And she looked over at the man, and she said, this is the type of house that I want when we get married. I said, you don't want somebody like that. She's envious. She's jealous. She's already showing it to you by what she's saying. It's all about the money with her. Love doesn't parade itself. You don't brag on yourself all the time. Love isn't puffed up. Love doesn't behave rudely. They're not rude to you. Love doesn't seek its own. You're not selfish. It's always got to be your way. Love isn't provoked. You're willing to turn the other cheek. You're willing to understand. Sometimes they're in a bad mood and they're a little bit grumpy and they say things. And so you don't get provoked at every little thing. Love thinks no evil. They're not suspicious of you constantly. Love doesn't rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth. Love, that's an important one right there. No one who's truly in love is going to ask you to do something or hide something that's sinful. Because love doesn't rejoice in iniquity. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. So are they people of love? Well, last question, number 10. Is this a person, finally, who is going to help me and my family on my journey to heaven? Because that, as a Christian, is where I want to end up. That's where I want my children to end up. That's where I want my unborn grandchildren to end up someday. I want them to be in heaven, and I need to put people with me who have that same goal in mind so we can get there. Where are you walking on life's journey? Mark 8:36 says, "What will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? What will a man give in exchange for his soul?" The world is anything here on earth. So you can change the words and you can insert for the world anything that's here on earth. You can insert, what will it profit a man if he gains a wife and loses his own soul? What will it profit a woman if she gains a husband, but she loses her own soul? We need to not forget where we're headed and not forget to put ourselves around people who are going to help us get there. Could it be that one of the youthful lusts that's mentioned in 2 Timothy chapter 2, one of the youthful lusts that we are to flee is the pressure or the desire to get married? Nothing wrong with wanting somebody to do life with. But 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 22 says, "Flee youthful lusts and pursue righteousness, faith, love, peace." But notice those next two words, "with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart." Get people in your life who are your closest companions who are also with you, pursuing righteousness, faith, love, and peace. That's who you need to be looking for. Now, the world might laugh at these expectations for a family or some of these questions that we're asking here. But those who trust the Lord are going to realize that He knows best. He created you. He knows what's best for you. He has plans for you. So take seriously what God expects of husbands and wives. And so, are you looking for that soulmate that's based on experience, based on emotion, feeling? Or are you looking for somebody that you can walk together with God with? Well, if you're somebody that's not married yet, I would suggest to you this. The best method for finding a godly person, or at least the first priority, is to be a godly person. Sometimes we put all the pressure on somebody else. I'm looking for that perfect person. Actually, put the pressure first on you. You be the right person. Because a person who's worldly minded right now, you're going to attract worldly minded people. A person who's unrighteous in dating, they're going to be unrighteous in marriage. A hypocrite, you're not going to win over a pious, devout Christian. So if you want the right person, be the right person first. We need to quit putting all the emphasis on the other person. You can't control them. You can control you. And so be the right person, the right kind of people will be drawn to your righteous character. That's how Jesus drew us to Him in the first place, isn't it? We love Him because He first loved us. He was the right kind of person, and He draws us to Him. Look at a couple of verses as we close here. Jeremiah chapter 31. Jeremiah chapter 31. We dig into the prophets for a minute here. In verse 3. "The Lord has appeared of old to me, saying, Yes, I have loved you with an everlasting love, and therefore with loving kindness I have drawn you." Jeremiah speaks of God. Because God has been constantly and enduringly steadfast and faithful and good and gracious and merciful, He draws good people to Him. John chapter 12 and verse 32 says this of Jesus. John 12 and verse 32, it says, "If I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw all peoples to myself." Why does that draw us to Jesus? Because He was lifted up from the earth on the cross so that He could be sacrificed and die for our sins because He loved us. And because we understand that that is the greatest act of love that anyone could have ever done for mankind, to die for mankind, we are drawn to Jesus. He is the right person, and we are drawn to His person. So are you following Jesus so you can become the type of person who can walk alongside another fellow believer through life? And if you'll start there, I think we'll start like a magnet drawing ourselves to the right kind of people. They're hard to find. You're going to have to do some searching. It's going to take some work, but they're out there. So I encourage you to try to listen to some of these things that have been said today. Apply them to your lives and to your choices as you seek out God's will in your life.